Welcome to the podcast. This week we're joined by the full turkeys again for the first time in like 97 weeks. Fooey's finished his stock take of his chicken nuggets and he's lying on his back. How you going, Foo?
Oh, yeah, I'm not too bad. I actually think you guys, judging by how much you laid into me last week, that maybe you guys, I don't know, have a contract out on me or something.
Just no sympathy, that's all. I mean, who the hell does stock takes that hurt their vocal cords? That was a weak excuse. At least be creative like Brasher when you're going to miss something.
I just worked out how to increase our listenership, making sure one or two of us are sick every week, so when you're not on, you actually listen to the podcast.
It's the first time for everything, eh, Fooey?
Oh, yeah.
We're also joined by Blackie. How you going, man?
Very well, mate. How are you going?
And we're joined by Brasher.
Good evening, all. How are we?
Yeah, Trump's president again, eh? Anyway, screw that shit.
I thought you weren't going to bring that up. How bad the Eagles are.
Look, I don't want anyone to be depressed, so how about we talk about Jesse Hogan being traded for a pick in the 40s?
54, actually. 54. I guess it's in the 40s if you reverse the numbers. Or did we get a better pick than what I was expecting?
Oh, well.
At least it's not back to Melbourne and it's a whole Trent Crow thing all over again.
It's a different state, at least, yeah. Anyway, I don't even want to... Yeah.
Almost as good as Brad Crouch or something in the 20s.
Have they actually agreed to do that, or are they going to sign him up?
They did. They bent over.
You can tell I've been out of touch. So, gentlemen, there's one obvious place I want to go straight away, but that would just get all the enjoyment out of the podcast in one go. Thursday night football. Matt Ryan won a game. Teddy Bridgewater lost a game. Details? Brash?
No, actually, it was. I do enjoy watching an NFC South contest, and it was. I thought that the Falcons would get run over in the end, but they managed to hold out. So I did actually watch bits. I watched this on. I think I watched it was a little bit unfair, I think, on the game as far as commenting on it, because I only watched the 40-minute abridged version on Game Pass on Friday evening. But yeah, look, they, just when you started to think the Panthers were going to be good, they go and lose a game you probably expected them to win. Yeah.
You know what jinxed them, don't you? It was me calling somebody who's currently not playing running back because they're out hurt. I called him Cam McCarthy in last week's podcast, and that was just like putting the Freo jinx on the poor old Panthers. So I'm sorry, Panthers fans. I apologise. No jokes? Not even a yuck at that? Okay, fine.
A Brandon Ayuk.
Oh, no.
Get rid of that.
Fooey, I was going to hold off, but I know it was your favourite game of the week. Tua finally played, had a fumble, I believe, or an interception, or both, in his first snap, and somehow still came away with the win, beating out your mate Fitzmagic. Were you disappointed more in Jared Goff's ongoing inability to stand up straight, or in Tua's failure to be as amazing as all the hype suggested he would be?
Look, I wouldn't...
Here's a hint. We're talking about Rams versus Dolphins.
Thank you for that. Sorry, I thought I was on mute. Okay, no, I'm not. I don't think it's too much on Tua. They got out to a fairly decent lead, the Dolphins, so it was a very... what's the word? It was a very... plain off. They didn't really need him to do a whole lot. So I think Goff was the major downside of that game, and the Rams in general just not being able to beat a supposedly inferior opponent. But Dolphins D is absolutely going really well at the moment.
So, Blackie, do you think Fooey actually watched his first game of the year?
Absolutely not. I don't think he knows who Tua is.
Confusing him with the younger brother, yeah?
He looks all right.
Yeah, he's a very promising college player based on the roadshow for 1 week of a hype train.
It's funny you say that, because anytime I go to say Tagovailoa, I keep going to think of Marcus Tuiasosopo, the ex-Raiders quarterback, so don't ask me why.
I'm just impressed you can get past the word Tug, given your normal focus in life.
The interesting thing about that game, though, there seems to be now a template to beat Jared Goff, and that is just mix up your defense.
I thought you were going to say just walk out on the field.
I
think it's more than that. I think it's you don't show your defense until the mic's cut off.
Yeah.
And also, let's be frank, don't be from the 8th best division in football, because there's one team that swept the 8th best division of football, and they're not in that division.
Yep, that's right. They've beaten all the through a peculiarity in scheduling, they've played the entire NFC East already, and their other win is the Bears. With their train wreck at quarterbacks. So, Jared Goff's fine. I think Blackie's absolutely right. As long as he gets told under which lineman to stand and which way to face and all the rest of it, he executes well when he knows when he has to be on script. But as soon as you mix it up, he clearly struggles. I don't think he can read defences.
Which is a real problem for the Rams, given how much money they paid him. They could almost be the 32nd best team in football that's leading the 8th best division.
Could be
more about
worse.
That later on.
They could have paid Carson Wentz.
You are perceptive this evening. Look, probably the only thing from me that stood out from the Rams-Dolphins game was the Rams, I think, are missing Eckler much more than people realise. And I wasn't, while I knew he was an important piece in their team, I didn't realise just how important he was and just how little depth they had at running back. And it was really surprising for me to see the
That's
Rams.
The wrong LA team.
Yeah.
That was me thinking
we can talk about the Chargers.
Deep insights into the game.
If you want.
No, I just gave myself some more editing work. It's been that sort of a week.
Do you want to trade for Herbert?
In which fantasy comp?
The Giblets are only in one that matters, mate.
First rounder.
First rounder.
I've got the mighty Garoppolo. I should be all right. Speaking of mighty quarterbacks.
When he's playing for Chicago next year, mate, they'll go really well for you.
Speaking of mighty quarterback showdowns, moving from Jared Goff to the Jared Goff versus Tua rookie showdown, or whatever you want to call that, which was an entertaining game to watch, but it wasn't high quality quarterback play. We have the Patriots-Bills showpiece. Is it really true to say that the Patriots have been sorted out and solved by the Blackies Broncos' brilliant defense, Brash? Have they really sorted them out and everybody else is just copying the Broncos?
Sorry, for the
Patriots-Bills. Well, the Broncos were the first team that really shut the Patriots down this year. We talked about it on last week's podcast.
I thought maybe it was a little bit of a false dawn the first couple of weeks with Cam Newton and that offense. They did go blow for blow with, they won a couple early and they went blow for blow with the Seahawks away. But the reality of it is they have absolutely zero talent on the offensive side of the ball. Even when they looked like they would amount a last-minute comeback, or at least tie the game up, Newton fumbled. I just don't think they've got the horses. So I don't even think it's so much that other teams have to scheme or being defensively brilliant against them. I just don't think the Patriots have anything for anyone to worry about.
See?
Yeah, no, I agree. They're very apart from maybe the offensive line, it's just they're just bereft of any real talent. I mean, like you will say, N'Keal Harry, but yeah, I don't know. There's maybe that rookie running back has something, but yeah, why would you watch them at the moment?
Yeah. In fact, I think you might have missed last week, Fui, that Blackie actually, I think, if I recall correctly, called N'Keal Harry a borderline bust.
I thought he liked it.
I thought he'd do well with Cam because of what Cam did for Kelvin Benjamin, but Cam isn't who he used to be either. I thought a big body possession guy would be all right, but he gets less separation than anyone, and it just looks like a legitimate bust.
Yeah, to me, I think they probably need to start rebuilding ground up.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they're tanking.
Yeah, it wouldn't. And it was interesting, Belichick's comments after the game, you just know the media's trying to create this "you're not so great, Bill, without Brady" narrative over and over again. And it was funny, in typical Belichick style, he doesn't mince words at press conferences, and he came out and said point blank, so what part of 3 Super Bowl wins, a loss, and an AFC Championship game in the last 5 years don't you guys get? At some time you got to pay the maker, and that's pretty much the way he's calling it now, right? So you can't win every year. here. It's supposed to be parity. They've had an unprecedented dynasty. If not for Manning, they may have won they could have nearly won 10 Super Bowls over that time. That's unprecedented and will never happen again.
And they kicked the can down the road on the salary cap side by continually converting their contracts to signing bonus, which prorates over the rest. So now they've got a cap problem, and they've also had 8 guys opt out due to COVID. So wouldn't surprise me if they're just taking this year, soak the cap up, get some decent draft picks. Then with like a Mac Jones, if they fall us backward into someone like Mac Jones, I'd be legitimately worried about them. For another dynasty.
And because they've a lot of people forget they've won in so many different ways. They won when they were the all-time scoring offense and should have gone undefeated. They've won grinding teams with defense. They stopped the unstoppable Rams in a Super Bowl. They've won in every different way, and I don't put it all on Brady. Brady has always been there to be consistent at quarterback. He's not going to lose games for him, and he'll win more when given the chance as well. But, they've won Super Bowls where no one even knew who Butler was, and he takes an interception on the goal line, when Seattle should have just walked in. They've won every different way. They've kicked it down the salary cap. They've deferred. Okay, what a good time to do it now when there's a bridge salary cap. Free agency is going to come open. Take your 1 or 2 years of lumps and then come back again. The key morph will be if Belichick's prepared to continue to coach him. That'll be the key for me.
And he really is. He is the one coach probably since Vince Lombardi, virtually, that could turn around and say to any team in the league, from the Jaguars to the 49ers, legitimately, probably Andy Reid's job is the only job where you would have a question mark. Could Belichick turn around and say to the owner, I want this coaching job? And he wouldn't be somebody's throwing them off the balcony outside. That's great.
Right.
The Chiefs are the only job apart from the one he's got that the owner would turn around and say, no, Bill, thanks for the application, but we got somebody. And arguably, would the Chiefs take him ahead of Andy Reid? Can you imagine Mahomes and Belichick?
Oh, that's what I would immediately retract the statement I just made about you'll never see another dynasty like that again. Because if you got Mahomes standing upright with that offensive cast basically looking after itself, and then Belichick scheming defenses with no names and never was's, then you are talking about a team that's guaranteed to win more Super Bowls than they lose in the next decade.
Yeah, which is, and if you're Belichick, for me, the key, and I think it is, I don't want to overplay it, but for me, it's the future of the Patriots franchise. Whether they go back to what they were for most of my life growing up, which was an absolute joke of a franchise all through the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, or whether they become what they've been for the last 15 or 20 years, which is a dynasty. It all turns on, for me, on whether or not Belichick stays. But it's funny, he's getting a lot of heat in the press at the moment, and it looks like most people have bought into the line that, well, the only reason they were any good was because Brady was at quarterback.
Here's the thing about the Patriots, why I think they can turn things around really quickly. If as Blackie said, they pick up the right quarterback, even as a rookie. And one thing the NFL drafted last year is it added legitimately, I think, could be as many as a dozen legitimate starting wide receivers in the league, right? Which means there will be quality wide receivers available for the Patriots at a good price when we start squeezing the salary cap for them going forward. Yeah, they can backload, they can kick it down the road again. So I don't expect them to be down for long, but I think they need to take a lump or two for the next 2 years. Every team does.
Shuey, you're talking about taking lumps. This is your one chance to talk about taking lumps.
I don't know where that's going.
No, I don't know where that was going.
Disappointing.
How good?
Anyway, keep moving along. Keeping them moving along, young man.
Speaking, I thought, the other thing I will say was I thought that it was quite a sad way for them to finish with Cam fumbling the ball at that last key play, but in the same way, very fitting that, summed up their day. And I'm sure that, Brasher, you would have been so sad to see Cam humbled.
I was a little bit, because he's a lot more humble as a Patriot, and it was just a silly fumble. It was all on him. Yeah,
It's just
anyway.
unnecessary.
Yeah, well, they
Unnecessary
were in
play.
field goal. They were in field goal range at the time. Would have tied it up, and they could have won it on the last possession. So
Indeed, it was almost like he was trying to mimic Carson Wentz or Aaron Rodgers. Oh, speaking of Aaron Rodgers, let's go to the other great quarterback showdown. Fui, I know as the quarterback whisperer, you were watching this one between Matthew Stafford, and we did have the breaking revelation on last week's podcast that Brash is a closet fan of Matt Stafford. I don't know where to go with that one. Matt Stafford versus Phillip Rivers, and I know that you're such a big fan of Phillip Rivers. So was Phillip Rivers just totally dominant and Stafford was completely inept, or did I miss the game?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't. Stafford's a good quarterback, but he's probably in the Matt Ryan level. Never really going to be elite, but not going to be same as Rivers really. But not going to be bad enough to lose a starting job. So it was probably a bit more of a blowout than I was expecting. Anytime the Chargers score 40 points, Colts score 40 points, it's newsworthy, and but I thought that the Lions would keep it a bit closer, but the Lions do what they usually do and don't perform when they need to.
Blackie, Matt Patricia done?
Yeah, I'd say so. Not much signs of life. And, he's supposed to be a defensively minded coach. He's not getting very much out of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Spent a lot of money bringing Trey Flowers out. Okuda hasn't looked that good. And they're just absolutely bleeding on the offensive side. They've spent pretty significant draft capital on bringing guys like Swift and Hawkinson in, and he isn't utilising them correctly. And they've even hit on guys like Golladay. He's an absolute baller. I think if he played for Green Bay, you'd be talking about him in the same breath as the upper echelon.
Yeah.
So, Brash, has your man love for Stafford moved on at all? Or
No, they're the most frustrating team in the league because, as Blackie just said, they've got a gun tight end. They've actually got a running back now. They've got two legitimate starting wide receivers in Golladay and Jones. And they still can't put it together. They're like, you know what they like? They're like, you got 4 jigsaw puzzles and you just jumbled all the pieces up from the 4 different jigsaw puzzles and tried to get one picture out of it. They're just a whole bunch of well-recognised, respectable players in their own right. Like, nobody says Stafford's a bad quarterback, ever. But they just don't win, and they don't win consistently. Even when the Packers were not very good, even when the Bears were picking Trubisky in the draft, even when the Vikings were going through rebuild, they've never managed to own that division ever. So there's something more deep rooted.
I think when you've got a lot of talent on one side of the ball or whichever side of the ball, and it's not working for so long, it's clearly not the player's fault. It has to be coaching.
Yeah, but do they keep picking the right? Like, they had Schwartz and he got them to a playoff and they were pretty good for a little bit, for 1 year, and then they fade away again. But even then, they were doing it more on the defensive side of the ball. They just have never clicked as a functional team.
Caldwell got a lot of the blame for it. It's not unlike the Cowboys. Caldwell got a lot of blame for how bad they were, and Patricia was supposedly going to come in and fix all that. Nothing's changed. If anything, it's gotten way worse, Anyway, I just don't know the Lions are, after the Jaguars, the Lions are genuinely the franchise that I am most concerned about what the future holds for them in the NFL, because they're dying. They're dropping away and so far off getting into the playoffs. Anyway, Fui, the other massive quarterback showdown of that slot of games would have been, and I know it was the game you were watching in that time slot, not the Green Bay game, Baker Mayfield versus the mate, and I know he's your favourite quarterback, Derek Carr. Was that just John Gruden out coaching the Browns, or is Baker Mayfield done?
No, I think that was a bit of a throwback to Gruden at his best. I think we spoke about a few weeks ago where that Raiders defense isn't too bad. So I guess it's no shame for the Browns offense to struggle a little bit, but I guess I still would have expected more than 6 points or whatever it was. But it was that kind of defensive slog of game which you probably didn't expect from those two teams.
Blackie, did you ever get an itchy trigger finger and feel like deleting American Crow's posts from the weekly thread this week?
Absolutely not. It's one of my great joys in life. The American Crow roller coaster.
Here we go. We'll have 12 pages this week. Fabulous.
It's a roller coaster. I think for those that have been in lockdown, it's almost like our very own soap opera, and I appreciate everything he brings.
You're clearly not intending to be watching the live weekly thread this week. Fabulous. For what it's worth, I thought that was a really interesting game in that it was, I think it's clearly, to pick up on a Blackie copyrighted phrase, it's clearly indicating that Brown's early record early in the season was, quote, somewhat fraudulent. And I think much like one other team in the league, they're being found out really badly. Anyway, we shall see where that goes. Even without Odell Beckham playing, the Browns were insufferably bad, I thought, and really badly coached as well. But that game was not, for me, the highlight game of that time slot. For me, the highlight game was watching watching Ben Roethlisberger beat up on Lamar Jackson. Was that the best game of the week, did you think, Brash?
No, I was very underwhelmed with Jackson in this game, and I even posted on the Week 8 thread that is pondered whether Jackson was turning into Colin Kaepernick Mark II. To have us, is he going to go the way of a lot of the other dual threat quarterbacks that are sort of take the league by surprise, play with their hair on fire, and then sort of get found out because, by and large, as much as we joke about coaching, defensive coaches and their staff are pretty clever. And I thought the Ravens would win only because I'm yet to be convinced really by the Steelers. But I just didn't. I thought this was one of those games where if Jackson was truly going to be the player he was last year, he would have stood up and overcome every adversity to win this, and he just didn't. He looked ordinary for most of this game.
So, Fui, undefeated Steelers, does that fill you with qualms? Are you really scared about facing them in the playoffs, should your team be fortunate enough to fall over the line into the playoffs?
I'm actually starting to come around a bit. They've obviously just traded for Avery Williamson as well from the Jets. So they're getting even stronger on defense, which is kind of scary. And the offense is just chugging along. They've got a lot of talent at receiver, as we've spoken about. I'm coming around. I think it was a good win. I think Jackson has been found out a bit. I think we said it before the season started that teams now have a season's film on him. He's got to start to rise above or go the way of Cap or even dare I say Michael Vick. Hopefully not to the same extent, but
So Blackie locked the dog away because Michael Vick Mark II is coming. Blackie, are you surprised that they didn't do a trade where they traded Marquise Brown to the Green Bay Packers?
I'd love that.
It's strange. There's a lot on offer. Will Fuller was probably gettable. Brown, John Ross. I think I don't know why these guys weren't taken. They're not seeing the field. I understand their value. Their value to the team is by and large much larger than simply how many receptions they're getting. For these speedy receivers, it's about stretching the field so the quarterbacks can take the underneath stuff. But especially John Ross, not even seeing the field, I think, it's surprising that they didn't look to offload him, especially considering that's probably the one position where the Bengals are actually pretty rich.
Especially with how Higgins has come along. So
speaking of the quarterback whisperer and his favourite young quarterback, did you see Tannehill falling off a cliff, or was this more just a question of Blackie that Fui's finally turned out after all the years of throwing darts at the dartboard, one's finally managed to hit the dartboard instead of fall off the side of the wall?
Tannehill? I think
Burrows.
Burrows. I think Burrow looks very good, but he could get turned into David Carr by that O-line. That said, I think they had 0 starters from week 1, and he was sacked 0 times. So there's probably a few issues on the Titans' pass rush. I think they were getting rid of Vic Beasley, and I think they're paying they're paying Clowney a lot and they've had 0 sacks between them.
Fooey, are you going to do your I was right, Burrows is number one dance?
I don't believe I need to right now. I think everyone knows it.
Bullshit. It's old T. Higgins, not bloody Joe Burrows.
Herbert is better.
We shall see. We shall see.
Brash, the Titans fallen off a cliff defensively.
They sort of, since their COVID scare, they came out and shocked the world by winning. They beat the Patriots, I think, which maybe wasn't that great a feat. 4 weeks ago, that sounded pretty amazing when they had no practice, came out and won. But it was the Patriots, that they beat, I think. And they've lost 3 since, where they need to go back to not practicing anymore.
A bit like Fooey not practicing for the podcast.
Maybe we give the Bengals some credit. I think we said a couple of weeks ago that I don't think the Bengals will win too many games. I don't think they're tanking, but they're quite happy to finish in the top 5 in the draft again. They got a bit of talent on the offensive side of the ball, and if they can manage to hit a team that misfires offensively on the day, the Bengals can put together enough opportunities to score points.
Keep in mind, they were out without Mixon as well, and he's a very good player. And obviously a key to keeping, a key to keeping the offense going. The team will know, defense will know they have to rely on Burrows to win the game, which obviously he did. But yeah, it was a massive out for them.
Yeah, but they got Gio Bernard. It seems to happen every so often. He had his one good game for the year to fill in. So they still got production out of running back. But I get what you're saying. Mixon was out. I will say, just on that game before we move on, I will say that I maintain my position that I think Zach Taylor's the worst head coach that's joined the NFL this year. And I can't believe how badly he's managing the Bengals. Even in this game should have been about 42 or 50 points for the Bengals. He just consistently mismanaged them all day. But that's my one takeout was not how good the Bengals were, but how much better they could be if they had a decent coach with all the weapons they've got. Moving right along, I know, Brash, I have to give you credit. You've been saying it for weeks, and I've been very skeptical, but it does look like the Jets' ownership are just backing Adam Gase no matter what. Comes up against Patrick Mahomes, scores 9 points, and he's suddenly being lauded as some kind of offensive genius.
Yes, just an awesome performance, wasn't it? What they have 5 3-and-outs in the second half with the Kansas City Chiefs basically playing prevent defense. That's how good he was going. And that was on the back of his 4 total yards of offense in the week before in the second half. So he's clearly got all cylinders firing for the Jets on offense at the moment. I don't know. It's just embarrassing what's going on there now.
They've turned Sam Darnold into a running back instead of a quarterback.
I think, again, it's a theme we could talk about all the time with poor old Sam Darnold. It's just not fair, is it, that he's not going to get a chance to prove whether he is an NFL-worthy quarterback and all the trimmings that then come with it. Because I think he's not like a lot of washouts that don't, there's always a knock. Yeah, he always had this major flaw and it was exposed in NFL, or he didn't have the work ethic, or he was injury-riddled. This kid shows up every week and gets slaughtered. Mm-hmm. Every single week he shows up and gets slaughtered. And he just deserves a chance.
Or alternatively, to at least get paid well by sucking while sucking, a la Sam Bradford or Kirk Cousins.
And he's gonna go down, and he's gonna be in that. He's not a Achilles Smith or someone like that, right? He's not just had fundamental flaws as an NFL footballer and went to a bad situation. Yeah, he went to a bad situation, but they exposed his flaws. Darnold is just being belted from pillar to post. He's not getting support from his coach, not getting support by his supporting offensive teammates. Not their fault, right? There is much suffering from their coaches as anyone else, right? So it's all flowing downhill onto Darnold's shoulders. Yeah, This is like he won't even get a chance to be someone like a Blaine Gabbert. Like no one will pick him up. He'll end up like he'll just become a wash and be just considered broken, and no one is going to invest their franchise in him other than being buried in a depth chart. going somewhere.
So he won't even manage to be picked as your avatar. He's not good enough to be the Blaine Gabbert.
No, Blaine Gabbert's already destined for the Hall of Fame, so he doesn't have to prove anymore. All he needs to do is retire permanently so he can get his eligibility for the Hall of Fame done as quick as possible. But
They might waive the 5 years for him.
they should. I've been petitioning for years. Come on, Canton, get your gear together. But I would love to see him behind. I reckon if he played for the 49ers or even the Broncos or what's another?
You put him behind that Steelers line with those wide receivers that they've got in Pittsburgh. He could be really
Be a superstar. Be a superstar. Give me a year, he'd be a superstar. Put him in Atlanta, he'd be a superstar.
Just don't send him to Philly. We don't need him.
Well, you've got more injured players than,
Well, when you've got a quarterback factory, you don't really need to send him there, do you?
No, that's right. We build our own. We draft and build our own. Moving right along on that note, Blackie, I know you particularly enjoyed watching the slow-mo replay of a certain quarterback getting sacked from behind in the last quarter. Was the Aaron Rodgers pain face appropriate, and was that just typical of the way the Vikings have their one decent win every year?
How awesome was the up close high def video of that? It was like the camera was 2 feet from him.
I know.
I thought it was a commercial when I first saw it.
It was like it was scripted.
Yeah, it was hilarious. Totally. Obviously I enjoyed that for a number of reasons. Fui, first and foremost. Aussie dude,
like me,
second most.
Almost got
like me,
loved.
did you reimpose a visual of Fui's face over the Aaron Rodgers helmet? Watching it in
I
slow-mo?
didn't bother because I figured Fui was probably laying down on his couch grimacing more than Rodgers was at the time.
Brash, at least it wasn't a pick six, right?
No, that's true. What the funny thing about this game is I tuned into this one early, and one of the talking heads was saying, well, I think with the weather here, this game could be decided on the ground. You think? Do you think that game was decided on the ground? Dalvin Cook just went berserk. I thought there was a typo when I saw the number of fantasy points he'd scored out of this game, and seeing their defensive, just hearing some of the, reading some of the posts during the week 8 thing around, our defense is so this, our defense is so bad, and Fui and I offering to go out with the tackling bags this week for them, and then Fui saying that we'd probably score against them as well. So, they were, what was Minnesota doing? What were the Packers
Whatever
doing?
it was,
I don't know.
The Minnesota Vikings turned up and won and handed them their asses on a platter. Fui, I don't mean to send you into crisis mode because we've had enough of that today with the US election, but you're not going to make the playoffs apparently.
I am worried. I mean, we've still got a shit easy schedule, yes, granted, but Minnesota is supposed to be part of that shit easy schedule. So you just don't know.
You got the 49ers on Friday. It's an easy win.
No, it's not. There's no such thing as an easy win with our defense.
Got no one to throw out there.
It doesn't matter.
Kyle Shanahan has activated himself.
Look, 10 months ago, we got absolutely smashed on the ground in the NFC Championship game. You'd think we would have done something to change this.
And not one of those running backs that ran out that day will be taking the field on Friday.
It doesn't matter who it is. I'll save it for the preview, but we're done. Like I said, we're going to have to score 40 points if we're going to win.
I'm a little bit disappointed in the way your defence has not come on. Is this something that you guys just don't think is important? Because it's clearly not. Clearly, you're not spending the money loading up on offensive weapons for Rodgers.
Yeah, clearly. we spent a shit ton of money on our front seven. Absolute shit ton.
You know what you are? You're the Wisconsin Cowboys. That's who you are. You assemble players on one side of the ball, but don't actually tell them how to play together. You're the Wisconsin Cowboys.
No doubt, unfortunately, because it is the same thing. The same issue the Cowboys have had for the past 10 years, and that the Packers have had. It's just why do we invest in all these defensive players, yet we can't stop, any freaking running back from fucking going nuts on us. It's just, it doesn't make it, and it's what I was saying before. There seems to be I don't think it's a talent thing, because I think there's plenty of talent there. It's got to be coaching. There's got to be something else. It's not the players. I can't see why it would be the players, because they do perform. They have performed individually, and it was a decent defense last year, but they've regressed.
Yeah, and do you get a sense that Rodgers doesn't like standing on the sideline? Like, because when your defense is giving up, granted, a lot of Cook's runs were as good as deep ball passes as far as time taken, but do you get a sense? I always get a sense that Rodgers gets frustrated when he's standing on the sideline too long.
Well, it's not so much too long. I think he just sees the defense playing. It's just like, you can actually see it in his eyes. He's thinking, I'm going to have to win this one for us again.
Maybe you should turn it over to Love.
No.
Trade him to San Francisco. If he wants to win a Super Bowl, trade him to San Francisco.
Blackie, I got to drag you into this. Apologies.
What have I done to deserve this?
We've been talking for several weeks about how tragic it is that Sam Darnold's going to be destroyed and wasted on that Jets team. How would you feel, Blackie, to be Devontae Adams, the sole halfway decent person that occupies a wide receiver position on that team? Okay, moving right along.
You know what the scary thing is? Like, Valdez-Scantling has improved over earlier in the season. So have the tight ends, but the defense still hasn't turned up. That's the scary thing.
You could seriously add JJ Arcega-Whiteside to that squad you've got, and he would be legitimately your second best wide receiver. Anyway, so Blackie's finished, so we won't worry about bugging Blackie for his views. Moving right along, we then got probably the most entertaining, or certainly the most unexpectedly entertaining game of the week for me. The old 1-point win by some team called the Broncos. Brash, was that really just because Drew Lock had a one-off good game, or is Vic Fangio learning from his time in San Francisco and starting to build a dynasty in Bronco land?
No, I think the Broncos are warming to the season. I think they've had some issues. I don't think Locke, I've gone on record saying I don't think Locke is a bad quarterback at all. I think they have enough talent on the defensive side of the ball to keep them in a lot of games. But, if they can show a little bit of offensive now, like they did on the weekend, plus let's not forget they played the Chargers, who wrote the book on creative ways to lose football games, which they did again on the weekend. This is it. The narrative now is, yes, the Broncos had a good win and the season doesn't look so bad now, or there's signs of life there, but the reality is we should be talking about a comfortable Chargers win. Yeah, this is more about the Chargers losing it than what Denver did. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just impressed watching Justin Herbert develop. He is legitimately enjoyable to watch as this day and age of how do I describe it? Non-conforming quarterbacks being the stars of the league. To see Justin Herbert and Fui's boy up in Cincinnati developing, it's a joy to watch. I genuinely enjoy watching those guys play their trade.
Quarterbacks that are not just running backs, but actually know how to throw the ball. Amazing.
Quarterbacks who play quarterback. How's that?
Blackie, are we not giving your magnificent punter enough credit?
I think Orlovsky actually did a pretty good breakdown of the second half, why Drew played a lot better than the first, and a big part of it was he thought that he was leading receivers into the open with his eyes, which I thought was pretty interesting. So even on the Hamler go-ahead touchdown, he didn't look at him till the last minute, and he's had a habit in the past of really locking onto his first read, so hopefully that's a sign of things to come. I think the game changed when Lindsay broke off that 55-yarder. I don't realise why the coach is the last one to understand that the more touches he gets, the better the team plays. They need to just pay him. Need to make him the primary back, get someone to spell him because he's quite small, but he's really good. Jerry Jeudy with a better quarterback would be talked about with the top tier wide receivers of the rookie class, he gets open pretty much every play. He's been really good. Fant, once he's back from injury, will be good. There's still issues on the O-line, but having said all that, Chargers lost the game. Lynn just continues to lose. What was it, their fourth game in a row where they've given up a 16-point or higher lead? It boggles the mind.
And it's not like they're bereft of talent, which is kind of the point I was trying to make when I drifted earlier into talking about Eckler's absence. They got Mike Williams. They got Keenan Allen. They invested picks in Josh Kelly. Justin Jackson's not having a bad year. But even with Justin Herbert standing out at quarterback as a unexpected young star, I don't think anybody in the Chargers would have expected Herbert to develop as fast and be as good as he has been early on in his career. They just can't get it done. And it's the Chargers. It's 27 years of the San Diego Chargers, just in a different city.
It's the Schottenheimer curse.
Yeah, whatevs. I'm surprised you could even say that without stuttering. So, Blackie, given we just raved about how magnificent your Broncos are and how they didn't just do a Bradbury and fall over the line against a choking mob, how bad were the 49ers? Was it all just down to Jimmy G not being hooked quick enough and they should have started Nick Mullins and everything would have been fine?
Mullins, yeah, I actually think Mullins is underrated. I don't know, Brash probably has a different perspective. It's hard to judge Jimmy because he's obviously playing on a crook leg, but, Mullins, I think, has shown good signs whenever he's played. I think the game where he got benched previously was probably the first game where he hasn't exceeded my expectations, but, they're probably thinking about next year anyway. If they can secure a top 5 pick, get Bosa back, there's no reason why they can't challenge next year. So I don't see why they wouldn't give Mullins a run and see what they've got in him.
Fui, were you surprised that the 49ers didn't put in an application to be transferred to the 8th best division in football so they could win a division with their shitty record?
Yeah, look, it does surprise me that they didn't try that, but because they're not known for their love for losing. So yeah, no. Just on the Garoppolo thing though, clearly I'm not saying clearly I'm right, but I am. Not as good as advertised. Mullins is just as good at about 1/100th of the price. So just get it done. Just get it done.
Hey Brash, I think there was a yuck that you wanted to mention.
Sorry, there was a
yuck that you wanted to mention.
No, not at all. I couldn't understand what the 49ers were doing with their play calling. There was one play on the third down where they had Garoppolo line out, a wide receiver, and McKinnon in the Wildcat, and it was the most botched, imbecilic play I've ever seen. And
Hey, I think you're totally underselling how much Garoppolo showed real interest in actually running from the line of scrimmage.
The issue I've got is, Garoppolo's an easy target, but I'm starting to think Shanahan, it's got to be about him, right? I'm starting to feel that if the 49ers win, it's because of him, right? And he's got to make sure everyone knows it's because of him. It's, when he came in and took the reins, he was so focused. The narrative, everyone knew as soon as Cousins gets out of Washington, he's coming to San Francisco to be my quarterback, right? He's the guy that drafted Cousins, even though they'd already drafted, what's his name?
RG3.
RG3. He was so bent on getting Cousins that he forgot this guy called Mahomes. Didn't even bother to look at Mahomes in the draft. Okay, and he's on record. He did not pay Mahomes the attention he should have got in the draft, and we could have had him, right? And we took Solomon instead. So he makes it so much about him, and then on the weekend he thought, well, okay, I'm down on my running backs. I'll bring Hasty in, who's got a lot of talent, but the Seahawks, who circle this game every year, doesn't matter what, they can be giving up 100 points every week. They'll go an extra leg when they play the 49ers. on defence. He continued to call runs, inside runs, off, between the tackles, and I think he got, maybe 15 yards on 7 carries or something, stupidity like that. But he kept calling them, and he's calling this wildcat plays. Wilson looked...
Am I wrong in saying that in that wildcat play, Garoppolo genuinely didn't even try to sell it, and that he just kind of stood there on the line of scrimmage and...
Well, they screwed up the snap count, if you look at it. They've snapped the ball at the wrong time, so no one was set for it anyway. I'm surprised we didn't get called for a false start. But I watched the end of the game the weekend before when the Cardinals played the Seahawks, and the Cardinals could not get near Wilson for 90% of the game. And then towards the end of the game and in overtime, they blitzed every play, and Wilson looked very average. And that's how the 49ers started this week. I thought, okay, good. We're not going to let Wilson stand back there, run around and just find Metcalf after standing behind or running around the pocket for 5 seconds. They blitzed him and they were 3 and out. Then they stopped straight away. Bang, slant the Metcalf, takes it to the house, all over, right? And we were behind after playing relatively well early. It was almost like the 49ers just went, oh, here we go again. Crowd or no crowd, here we are. We play well for 90% of the snaps, and then one snap, bang, it's all over. And that's how it just played out. Yeah, play calling was rubbish after that. And then Mullins comes in and just lights it up. And a lot of people say, "Oh no, Seattle were playing prevent." Carroll does not play prevent defense against the 49ers ever, right? So he was playing the same schemes, the same aggression, and Mullins scored on 3 consecutive drives. Yeah, that was the difference for me. And all of a sudden, passes being forced down the field, passes going to the sideline. It was... Mullins is far more decisive. I don't know if it's naturally, if it is a fact or it's just a circumstance of now, but Mullins is far more decisive and reads the defense better than Garoppolo, this version of Garoppolo does at the moment.
Garoppolo looks to me like he's suffering from micromanaged employee syndrome. It's like he's going out there, but he knows that the coach is only going to tell him to do one thing, and Garoppolo knows that he's not actually that good at that one style of play. So you kind of just get that resigned sigh, and he does what he's told to do, but there's no enthusiasm or natural flow.
Yeah, I don't know. All three quarterbacks on the roster of the 49ers are susceptible for stupid, boneheaded throws to the opposition, right?
So Wentz would be perfect for you guys to pick up in a trade then.
Probably, yeah. I think, as much as I hate to say it, $25 million, depending on where the 49ers finish, and I think the next month will say all we need to know about that. If they're still in a fight for the playoffs, because the 49ers won't lay down, they will, they could finish mid-table. But if the next month they drop the next 3 or 4, then they'll probably not finish with any more than 5 wins, pick top 10, and be a legitimate chance to get one of the better quarterback in the league, not named Lawrence, in the draft. So then maybe that's in Garoppolo and his $25 million salary.
So Blackie, polish up your backup quarterback for a trade to the 49ers. Really quickly, from my point of view, I thought the highlight of the week was the showdown between the 2 Australian punters, Wishnowsky and Mike Dixon. Both punted 4 times. Dixon punted for 216 yards, and Wishnowsky punted for 202. So for those that are not mathematically inclined, hello, Fooey, that's an average of more than 50 yards a punt. So yet another outstanding display by both of those gentlemen, which, considering that neither of them had been born into the sport or picked up an American football until they were in their 20s, it's a pretty amazing, consistent performance by both of them.
I think nearly all of them put their punts in, except one. I think 78 punts finished inside the 22.
Yes, yeah. Do we want to talk about Breeze versus Foles?
No,
I'll take that as a...
No.
Yeah.
Oh, well, actually, why talk about Breeze versus Foles when you can talk about Wentz versus the Gucci Danucci?
Worst game ever.
Yeah.
Worst game ever. You know what's even worse about that game? Everyone was saying, well, and I've said it before, well, at least you had your starting former Pro Bowl quarterback. Dallas actually had more offense than you guys.
Gee, that's a high bar to have to pass.
Well, with a rookie quarterback, who I noticed wore long sleeves to hide his hairy arms this week.
You've given him a complex.
Yeah, I did. Probably was listening to that brasher.
Avid listener.
Avid listener. Let me get a few insiders.
Let's face it, he wouldn't have been expecting to do much except listen to podcasts all year, really.
True.
Apparently, he won't be quarterbacking them this week. There'll be another Cooper Rush or someone
Who?
brought in. So, yeah. But it was interesting the way that they came out of
that
that.
from the Fooey stable?
No, definitely not one of mine.
I'm not sure about that. With a name like Rush, he sounds like he'd be right out of your neck of the woods. I mean, seriously, who picks and plays at quarterback someone named Rush? Pass rush? Jesus. Anyway, for me, the only slightly exciting part of that game was watching the general reaction of the Philadelphia crowd, and it just reinforced what I've been saying all year, which is the only bright side for the Eagles players, coaches, and support staff is that they haven't had to put up with a riot at a home game, because with COVID there haven't been very many fans in the stadium. And I think that was the first game of the year they were allowed 11,000 fans in that stadium, and they made the booing was like right up there with 35,000 fans in most stadiums. And yeah, I don't even really want to talk about it, except Blackie, subject to your views, I think Fulgham is the real deal. Having said that, he'll probably have 5 drops this week. And conversely, and gee, this is a surprise, I didn't pick this at all, I think Jalen Reagor is a complete bust and yet another waste of a draft pick.
I've got to say, I am inclined to agree, which is making me want to reevaluate things.
The world has stopped spinning.
Brash, my only follow-up question for you is, was that really... Did Gucci really fumble the ball and it stay alive, or was that a mistake by the Zebras? I'm talking about the one that was returned for a touchdown.
Which one?
The Danucci fumble that was returned for a touchdown by Rodney McLeod.
I didn't see it. Sorry, mate.
Oh.
Sorry, buddy.
How could you have missed this high-quality, highlights-filled, outstanding game of football?
Because it's the NFC East. What else do you need to know? I was too busy watching my stupid game. Can only do so many things.
Tell the truth, you're actually watching replays of Rodgers get sacked in slow-mo on your high-def 42-inch screen.
No. Yeah. 78-inch.
Talking about the high-quality quarterback showdowns, and to be fair, this week did have quite a number of quarterback showdowns when you go back, starting with the Rivers-Stafford showdown and some of the others. We finished the week on a surprising high between, I know, Blackie's favourite young quarterback in Danny Dimes and old man Brady. I don't want to repeat an old, used, tired line, but to be frank, this was the New York Chargers coached by Anthony Lynn, because the Giants just choked this one away. Danny Dimes cost them the game, pure, plain and simple. Response, Blackie?
He kept them in the game too.
Yeah.
They have Dion Lewis and Freeman at their running backs. They've got a work in progress O-line. You know, their receivers are Sterling Shepard and my man Darius Slayton. Ingram is catchy. They need an overhaul. I thought it was going to be a blowout. I was surprised that it wasn't.
They've hung tough for the last few weeks, New York.
The defense keeps them in it for a fair bit of it. So
That was pass interference at the end of the game. I'm getting a little bit over officiating and the selective calling of penalties in games, and there's just absolutely no retribution around it at all. I know the pass was late, but I've seen, you got guys like Ben Roethlisberger who deliberately throw up passes for pass interference, has no intention of the receiver touching it, right? Which is in part what makes their receivers so good all the time, is because defensive backs are too scared to get on him, and that was a clear. He ran through him. I don't care if it was late.
Surely you have to look at the ball at some point.
At some point, yeah. Isn't that the rule? You didn't turn around and look at the ball.
Yeah.
You hear that every single time it's called. You didn't turn around and look at the ball. And then, I forgot to mention the 49ers game, that absolutely disgusting Russ Wilson baiting the defensive player to hit him and not going down on the slide. It's just everything is stacked to the officials now just calling outcomes to games the way they want. And you just knew they were going to not call that PI call at the end there against the Giants.
So a fabulous week of football was wrapped up, Blackie, with that outstanding win by the Tom Brady, the 2 touchdown passing. So I don't know how many hundreds of touchdowns he's got now, but that was another 2 to his book. Are you looking forward to the debut of Antonio Brown, otherwise known as Tom Brady's latest house guest?
Oh, just another mouth to feed, although it's been a weird offense. You know, Goldman's obviously been injured. I think Evans is dealing with something. Gronk's been hit and miss, and it's been Scotty Miller and blokes I've never heard of, getting the bulk of the receptions. It'll be interesting to see. My prediction is old mate doesn't get as many targets as he thinks he deserves and goes ballistic within 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's...
Particularly because his contract is so heavily incentive-driven by number of catches, isn't it?
Yeah. A couple of records broken on the weekend too, passing break records. Breeze went ahead again in the total touchdowns. And unfortunately, Brady to Gronk now surpasses Young to Rice as the number 1 hookup record for touchdowns.
Surely the race record is off way fewer games played and passes together. Surely
way fewer games because Gronk has only ever caught passes pretty much from Brady, and Rice had quite a few from Montana before that. Yeah, and then a few after post Young as well.
Yeah, so it's an interesting stat, but I don't reckon if you rate it as quality, I don't reckon that it's anywhere. The Gronk Brady partnership is anywhere near the quality
Young to
of
Rice.
No, not even close. Trade results. I know you were busy with your Nuggets, Fooey, so I won't ask you. Brash, were you surprised that the 49ers didn't avail themselves of more talent, or was it pretty much as expected?
No, they're not in win now mode, and everyone we trade for or bring in gets injured anyway. The big move was getting rid of, we bought in 3 defensive ends so far to replace Boza, or try to replace. 2 of them are on IR, season-ending IR, and the 3rd one suits up this week. We'll probably sack Rodgers 9 times with a bit of luck. The big move for us was really getting rid of Kwame Alexander.
Another outstanding contract that you guys signed, yeah?
Yeah, we signed a few. We have this propensity to sign injured players on injury clouds. I hope Lynch learns from it. He buys on their best, not what they will contribute over the journey. Okay, this isn't. You're not buying tickets to a one and done ride at a theme park. This is something that you need to survive 3 and 4 years if you want to build dynasties. Kwame Alexander's best is very good, but not if he misses every second game.
And certainly not at that price you guys were paying for him either. I have to say I thought it was a very good trade in the sense that it freed up a fair bit of salary cap for you next year.
Look, at the time it made sense because we had to make splashes and we had to get playmakers into our team, right? So I was fine with it at the time, but there was always a question mark about his durability, and he's been out injured for significant lengths every year that he's been a 49er, and prior to that, for that matter.
So, Fu, you'd be disappointed, of course, that they didn't bring Jordan Love in, and even more disappointed that they didn't trade for a genuine wide receiver?
Look, I was absolutely horrified at the thought of possibly getting Jeffrey. I was warming to Fuller, but definitely not for a second rounder, which could have effectively just been a loaner for the second half of the season anyway. So, there was words that we'd get Mr. Dropsy from San Francisco, but he's been cut now, so we can get him free if we want.
Yeah, good luck with that. Enjoy.
Well, we've got receivers who might be able to show him how to catch the ball anyway. So, we've got one. We've got one. Okay, we've got one. I would have liked to have seen a receiver traded for, but at the end of the day, we've got much bigger problems that need to be addressed. Probably ASAP. So yeah, he was a lot quieter than I thought it was going to be, though. To be honest,
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't find a wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get one in the draft.
They just knew that Dante Pettis was going to get cut, so why trade when you can wait?
That's right.
Speaking of cuts, Blackie, I know you would have been totally surprised to see both within 2 days, both Dontari Poe and Vic Beasley get cut by their respective teams. Is that the end, or are there some more cuts coming in the next couple of days?
There's cuts coming all the time. I don't think it was all that surprising to see Dontari Poe get cut, given he's been significantly overweight. But yeah, Vic Beasley wasn't really surprised, as I mentioned earlier. 0 sacks between him and Clowney on the year when they're being paid pretty significant sums of money just isn't good enough.
Anything else from the week, gentlemen? Brash?
49ers finally got rid of, wish they'd done it a week earlier, got rid of Pettis, second round draft pick wide receiver, only in his third year. Couldn't find any takers in the trade table and just got rid of him. So other than that, not much else. Pretty quiet trade week, really.
Incredibly underwhelming trade week, especially considering, even the Eagles or the Washington football team, it wouldn't have been surprising to see them, either one of those teams, reach out for help.
A couple of teams stunned me. Like, if I was Houston, I'd be in full fire. I would have been in full fire sale, mate. I reckon, Green Bay surely would have been on the phone to get Fuller or something like that.
Yeah, but not for a second rounder. They wanted too much.
Yeah,
because you've used your first and second round picks last year to such great effect.
Yeah, you could have got him. I reckon they need all sorts of. They need draft picks all over the place. There were some teams that I knew were not going to trade come hell or high water. Here's my blockbuster, and I've got to blame Blackie for putting this idea in my head. Quinnen Williams will be a 49er in 2021.
Which means that, just like Quan Alexander, he'll be cut in 2022.
No, the 49ers will go back to what works, and that is having an all-powerful, immovable, destructive defensive line. That's their formula for success, and everything else with offense will feed off that. And I think their loss of Buckner has hurt them more than they thought. Forget, Bosa and all the rest of it. They were still, they're not getting the 11 and 12 sacks from the interior that they were getting with Buckner. 8 to 10 sacks they were getting with Buckner before Bosa even showed up. So I can just see it. I had a dream. Quinnen Williams will be a 49er in 2021.
I don't want to crush you, Brash, but that version of having a dream is not quite as motivational as Martin Luther King's version. But keep working on the delivery, you'll get there. Blackie, the Berg of the week from week 8 games. Who are you going to give it to?
Cam Newton.
Nice pick, because I can see them drafting a hot young quarterback and going straight back to multiple Super Bowls. Fooey, who you got?
Was Blackie going to say something else?
I was going to say it's probably a story for another day, but I'm actually pretty scared of how many good quarterbacks there are in the coming draft. I think there's about 6 guys that could go in the first round.
Yep.
That'll be a story for a probably off-season discussion.
Absolutely. There are 4 guys that I believe will be very much within the 49ers radar this draft. And I firmly believe that if you get a good one and you play them under a rookie contract, you can win a Super Bowl if you got the right coach and the right personnel management around them. That's the formula these days to win. I think you'll find the Brady thing was a bit of an outlier going forward.
On the other hand, 2 of the 4 will be coached by probably Kyle Shanahan and Adam Gase, which means that those 2 will be abysmal.
I think Kyle Shanahan. I'll take Shanahan over Peterson as a offensive.
Oh yeah, absolutely, no doubt. Agree with that. But
Shanahan's just got to learn. It's not going to be all about him. That's all.
And occasionally actually let the quarterback play to his strength instead of forcing him to play a certain way.
I'll tell you who might be totally screwed out of what Blackie just said. Could be Dak Prescott.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Dak Prescott could get totally screwed. Agree. Cowboys could pick top 5 and get one of these guns, and then he gets to get butchered by Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, but hang on.
He ends up with the Browns.
Why would they be taking a quarterback when they've got Gucci Danucci?
Mate, they're picking top. They're picking top 5, and Jerry Jones is going to save $40 million a year, mate. Dak Prescott is gone.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. But they've got Gucci. Why do they need to go and get another quarterback? They've got the outstanding Gucci.
let's be serious. Let's be serious. This could fall. These cards could fall very well for the Cowboys. They didn't pay Prescott. He'll go somewhere else. He could end up the new Teddy Bridgewater, the way this is going. So, but if I was the Cowboys, I'd do exactly the same thing. There are some excellent quarterbacks in this draft, and someone like the Cowboys are going to be in a prime position to take one.
So, Fui, who are you giving the DeBerg to?
There's a Berg for me.
Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers?
No,
Go ahead, say Rodgers.
No, definitely not. Blackie might want to cover his ears, but Danny Dimes. I think I counted 3 or 4 of the exact same throw. One was intercepted, 2 were not. He just doesn't learn from his mistakes. Seriously. So, yeah, no, Danny Dimes for me.
No reply, Black?
Look, I don't. He might not be the answer, but it's impossible to tell. It's like Darnold. How good are these guys? We potentially will never know because they've been ruined by terrible franchises.
Yep.
And Brash, who are you going to pick? I know you're going to want to nominate Jimmy G.
I haven't got a candidate this week.
There's so many.
I haven't. They're just all mediocre. I just don't. Who can I pick out of all these? Oh.
All right. Well, while you're thinking about
I'm going to pick Fitzpatrick.
He didn't even see the field in week 8, did he?
He'll pick the paycheck up. That's all Fitzpatrick's about, mate. He's done his job.
Oh,
he got beaten, and they won.
My pick will have to be Carson Wentz, who somehow won the game, but had a worse passer rating, more turnovers, and fewer yards than Gucci Danucci.
And would you expect anything more from the NFC East?
8th best division in football, baby.
Some teams going to, some teams going to win the NFC East. The best they can pick in the draft then will be 14th, something like that.
20th.
20th, yeah. It's a poison chalice.
It's a poison chalice, yeah. They'll win their division with 6 wins, and there'll be teams picking after them that have got 8, 9, and 10 wins.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my bet is that it'll be the first time in history that a team with only 5 wins is picked in the 20s in the draft.
Well, they did say that there might be they might even expand. Well, was that a precursor to maybe a shortened season that they're talking about an 8-team playoff?
Yeah.
Right? 8 seed playoff, which means...
Is it to avoid the embarrassment of having to have an NFC East team in the playoffs?
I think so. What would be worse, Philly, is if they said, no, we're not going to have wild cards. We're just going to have first and second seed from each division go through. So that way you could even get someone like the Giants go in at like a 3-13 record playing the Packers or something like that.
It will be so 2020 if a team with 5 wins goes in and wins a playoff game.
Yeah,
I think
that.
Yeah. It's a pity that there's so many wins in that division to be had. Otherwise, you would have a divisional winner with 3 or 4 wins.
Ooh, I think you're overestimating what the.
Well, they have to play each other. You see, there's got to be.
But you're assuming that the results don't end in draws or ties, to use the proper Americanism.
Well, 2 draws add up to a win. Do you deny my logic?
Nope. I've never done that. I've certainly never done that.
Cool. Just as long as we're seeing that clearly.
Blackie, have you got any last words apart from how much you're looking forward to week 9?
Yep. No, that's it. Looking forward to week 9.
All right, we'll get to the preview.